All right, Global Tribe. I'm tremendously envious of our next guest, who's been a friend forever. And it's been a thrill for me to watch him and everything that FlightScope has done. So, Henri Johnson, welcome to this On the Mark show. I'm so envious of you being in South Africa right now. How are you?
Hi, Mark. Yeah, thank you very much. I'm back for a few weeks. Come here twice a year.
Mm-hmm.
Been in the US for 17 years and really enjoyed it. But it is good to, be back in Cape Town and Stellenbosch area and just say hi to the family, friends, and, pick up the roots.
Well, I'm thankful that you would join us because there's a pretty significant time change between the USA on the East Coast and South Africa. So I know it's in the evening for you. So I want to dive in, Henri, because before I hit record here, um, I said to you, launch monitors, the game can't do without them right now. And rangefinders, the game cannot do without rangefinders either. It's a long way removed from back in the day when I was a kid and I had to pace off yardages if there were 150 plates available. So, distance control and all this sort of thing defines the quality of the golfer. And you have been at the forefront of this all since I can remember. So I want to kick this off because I don't think the people that have launch monitors really understand how the golf ball travels. They don't understand ballistics. So I'm going to let you go and tell this very cool story about Bryson DeChambeau, Tiger Woods at Rivera, and you were on hand. So let's kick off the conversation right there.
Yeah, that's a good story. So a few years ago, I was walking with Bryson and the Tiger, in a practice round.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was par three, six hole. It was sun was setting a little bit, and Tiger hit six iron, and he was about 3 yards short. It was about 200 to the flag,
All right.
and that's fine. He's on the green. And Bryson monstered a seven iron. He was 13 yards short,
Okay.
and Tucker, his caddy, paid the price immediately. And Bryson hit another shot, and he, came a few yards, closer, but he was still off the green.
Yeah.
And then the conversation started, if I can call it that, um, between Bryson and his caddy. And I came to the rescue and said, Bryson, I think there's something in the air. There's something going on here. I
Mm-hmm.
think I understand it, but I haven't got it down. And he said, really? And I said, yeah, I think I can calculate it. And he said, let's do it.
All right.
So I actually sat on the plane and started writing some software. And so let's look at what they went through here. So Tiger Woods took his 200-yard club, which was his six iron.
Mm-hmm.
Bryson took his 200-yard club, which was his seven iron.
All right.
Tiger was 3 yards short of the flag, and Bryson was 13 yards short of the flag. So how do you explain that? Both of them used their 200-yard club.
Yeah.
Now, this is a very, very important point because they did what they had to do from, their sheets and their records. But what nobody really understood definitively at the time was how the ball flight was different between Tiger's ball and Bryson's ball.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'll just jump a little bit forward. Basically, we know that Bryson uses a single length club, so his seven iron is the same length as the six iron.
Yeah.
He swings at pretty high swing speeds. Ball speed is significantly higher than most other people for the same club. And the weighting in his club is different. And so he has, on average, say at least 1,000 RPM more spin on his seven iron than maybe you and I or
Mm-hmm.
other people,
Yeah.
maybe even more compared to others. Now, what actually happens is that when the ball is flying through the air, there are two major factors. The one is the air resistance
Mm-hmm.
for that particular ball at its speed and spin that it's going.
Yeah.
And the other one is the lift forces that are imparted as a result of the aerodynamic principles of that govern the ball flight. So because the ball is somewhat like a wing of a plane, there are similarities in the sense that you have resistance and you have some lift forces.
Yeah.
Now, in Bryson's case, the fact that he was 13 yards shorter was because of two things. The drag that his ball experienced was significantly more than Tiger Woods' ball. And the lift forces were also significantly higher, meaning it would rise more. Now, that combination over time, because force over time is going to do something.
Yeah.
It's a fact of physics. And what happened with Bryson's ball, it basically just went higher and shorter. So it kind of makes sense. But nobody knew what the conditions were at the time in terms of the air density and what we call kinematic viscosity. Now, I know these are heavy terms. You don't have to remember it, but these are facts. What was really important was that we learned that even at the highest level, people don't always know cause and effect when it comes to ball flight.
Yeah. There's no doubt. There's absolutely no doubt. And this is what I as a teacher encounter. And I guess the skinny of it is that your club golfer, let's just call him Joe. Joe gets out there and he knows he hits his 7-iron 150. But that's total yardage. It's not just carry yardage. The thing may fly 146 and roll out 4 yards. So he goes, but I hit this thing 150. Or if he sees a 150 flag, he hits it and the ball's somewhere close to the green. And he goes, okay, it's my 150 club. Then all of a sudden he has to carry it 150. Then he comes up short in the bunker. And he's like, what's going on? And he tries to swing harder. And the harder he swings, the more backspin he imparts on the thing, like you're pointing out, and it stands up in the air even worse and comes up shorter. And it becomes this maelstrom. It's almost like a whirlpool of a guy going in the wrong direction. Then you add to that the fact that Joe, in the middle of the day when it's hot and humid, the golf ball's traveling farther. And then all of a sudden, as it cools down in the evening, temperature lowers and the ball goes shorter anyway. But Joe, all the while, is trying to hit the same club. And so as a result, he is just not improving despite having a real understanding of how this golf ball travels, which is, you paint the picture so well. And just real fast before we introduce you, talk to us, because you talk about the lift forces. The lift forces is spin, it's essentially on the golf ball and the speed of it, correct?
Those are the factors that influence these forces. Yes, it's a very, very complex and a non-linear interaction between ball and the medium, which is air in this case. And as I said, you can relate it somewhat to an aeroplane wing, where there's a lift force and there's drag, trying to stop it. But yeah, the speed at which the ball is traveling is like quadratically related to the friction or the resistance that it will experience. And when it comes to spin, the lift forces are somewhat linear. It's almost one-to-one, if I can put it like that simply, in terms of the lift forces that are imparted. But the ball speed is a major factor in this ball, and spin somewhat of a factor, if I can put it like that. So people sometimes maybe overestimate the effect of spin, and whereas ball speed it's still the major contributor of the forces involved.
I want to put it to you this way as well. Here's another thing, and my mind is now wondering, and I'm looking for either clarification or I want you to say, no, young man, this is how it really works, because you're the brains in this conversation about this topic. I see so many golfers, they watch enough television or see social media enough to know, all right, ball speed, ball speed, ball speed. And so they start changing clubs, swinging faster, all the rest of it to up the ball speed. But if they don't launch this thing adequately with the correct launch, it was not going to stay in the air long enough to really get the commensurate distance out of the thing. So it's more to it, I guess, is what I'm saying, than just going, okay, I'm going to get faster club and ball speed wise. Am I correct in my assumption?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it gets a little bit more technical in the sense that um, people are different in terms of how they launch the ball,
Uh-huh.
both in spin, speed, and launch angle.
Mhm.
And those three factors are very important when it comes to how far the ball is going to carry
Mhm.
within certain conditions. Um, and you're right when you said, somebody's swinging harder, the ball's going faster, but it's also spinning more, so it might climb up more and that kind of thing. So it's a very complex interaction. And I've heard people on the range, I was at Orange Tree and somebody next to me almost had a flight scope, and his buddy was explaining to him what his spin should be. And I was just listening. I was kind of studying under the
Were you laughing
umbrella as
inside?
well. But it was interesting for me to observe and to listen to people how they reason about their interpretation of the factors and how they contribute, like spin.
Mhm.
And what I know from my own experience and also just from physics, very few people and very few golfers really understand how does spin relate to my ball flight.
Yeah.
How does launch angle and ball speed, that whole combination relate? How would that affect my ball flight? They get an idea, but they don't really know. It's very, very complex, that interaction, and you just can't work it out in your head. You might relate it somewhat, but it's very, very complex to work out. So there is an optimum. Say you want to hit an optimum carry
Yeah.
for a particular club. That will be determined by your ball speed, launch angle, and spin for you.
Mhm.
And then it will also depend on where you are. You might be at Denver or you might be in Palm Beach,
Yeah.
and that's going to be different. So we've done optimizer in the past, and people can still do that, but you need to decide, are you interested in carry or are you interested in carry and roll?
Cool. Yeah.
Because that's also, that's also going to be affected by, again, same things, the launch angle, the spin, and the speed of the ball, because the roll is, of course, going to be dependent on the surface on which it lands.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, the golfer really normally don't understand how these things work specifically for him or her.
Or we know just enough to be dangerous and make some ill-advised understandings, decisions that are born of a lack of understanding, which essentially was the origin of this podcast, is not just to introduce the bright mind to the golfing public around the world, but then to help them to this place where it's like, okay, I really understand this concept. And that allows me, whoever it might be, to make the informed and correct decision when it comes to game improvement stuff. So it's with that I want to sort of partially introduce you and let you finish the job about just putting you into context. Folks, I've known Henry since I was a young golf teacher in South Africa, which is many, many years ago. It was like in the late 90s. And Henry is a ballistics expert and designed a launch monitor and showed it to me. And I'll never forget, Henry, where I had an understanding of how the ball traveled, my understanding because of what I learned from Dr. John Jacobs. And what you showed me for a right starting draw, you're like, well, the club face has to be open. And I was like, no, it doesn't. It's got to be closed. But you were talking about the club face situation, orientation in relation to the path at which it's traveling. And I knew just enough to be a little dangerous as a golf instructor, somewhat helpful. And I remember in my head going, this guy and his machine is wrong. Okay, fast forward, I don't know, that was in 90 something. And we're in 2025 now. It's not that I don't go anywhere without a FlightScope launch monitor, but I almost don't go anywhere without a FlightScope launch monitor because it is real truth serum. Okay, with that all being said, please tell the folks around the world just a little bit about you before we get into FlightScope.
Right. So I'm an electronic engineer. I did my master's degree here in Stellenbosch in South Africa in signal processing. And when I was in grade 6, I built my first radio transceivers and that kind of stuff. So I was always into
All
electronics.
right.
was going to become a medical doctor, and I was very enthusiastic. I'm still very enthusiastic and over enthusiastic. I was going to a post-mortem very early in my young life at school. I'm not going to talk about the
You're
details,
an
not going
odd
to
bird,
spoil
yeah.
your breakfast or your lunch.
Uh-huh.
But so I decided, oops, I'm not going to go into the medical science because, it was a little tough to handle. But my hobby was electronics, so I became an electronic engineer,
Okay.
and that was my hobby. So it's great to have your hobby as your job. And I worked at a fantastic facility or research facility, the Institute for Maritime Technology in Simonstown, which was naval research and defense. And I worked there for about 18 months, and I decided I'm not a corporate animal. I'm going to do my own thing. I didn't know what I was going to do, and I went out, started my own company. And, the year after that, we basically delivered our first muzzle velocity radar to the defense industry, which basically is a system you put onto guns, and it measures how fast the projectile is launched. And we started measuring spin, and we
Mm-hmm.
measured wobble on the ground, if you can call it that. Pitch and yaw. It's another name for it, but let's call it wobble.
Mm-hmm.
And we went, quite deep into that. We finally developed a tracking system that tracked a 155 millimeter round from the infamous or famous G5, G6 guns in South Africa that at the time could actually travel 42 kilometers.
Okay.
We could measure it for 25 kilometers
Wow.
with our radar. It's a full tracking radar that we developed. And our system basically helped a huge radar that stood a kilometer behind the facility to measure, the projectile until it lands. And our system trained that system to get onto track, basically, because it
All
had
right.
like a 0.9 degree beam. 0.9 degrees, very small.
No kidding. Jeez. If I look at my wristwatch and I see 1 second is a degree, like 0.9 is like nothing.
You think it's a degree? 1 second is 6 degrees. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, I'll stand down. Keep going.
Something like that.
Something like
Anyway, there we go. So it's so basically, we were into ballistics, and then the South African defense industry, didn't do so well, and South Africa was at the time not very, so we say, welcome in the world because of sanctions, but that also gave us an opportunity to do a lot of things. But the defense industry went really, really down, and I said, okay, well, we're not going to make money in defense anymore. What do we need to do? So I got a call from one of the rugby players called Berger. I'm sure you know him. And he that Mega Pro Marketing, and we did a system for cricket. So we designed, that was our first sports system for bowling speed and cricket, autonomous basically, and that was very successful. Kind of made us famous in
Mm-hmm.
England, Australia, and South Africa, and so on. And then we had a call from somebody in tennis, and we made a tennis radar that was more accurate than the speed guns. And then we were like, okay, so what's next in sport? And it's like, okay, maybe golf. I never played golf before then. I
All
never
right.
touched the golf club. Thought it was for old people. Now I'm there. But anyway, so um, I got, introduced to Danny Else's brother, Dirk,
Mm-hmm.
and a few others. And he hit some balls. You hit some balls. We developed something. And I was like, okay, what do we measure? Like, okay, people said, okay, I think we would like club speed and maybe ball speed. Oh, we did that. Oh, is that good enough? And we said, and Dirk L said, oh, maybe we should get the distance. And I remember him hitting like, up in Pretoria, he was hitting like 320 meters carry.
And for the folks who don't know, incidentally, Pretoria, Johannesburg, is how many thousand feet above sea level? I mean, the air is thin up there.
Yeah, I think it's 1,600 meters.
Yeah,
I think it is. One can check it out, but I think it's right about there.
it's way up there. So the ball, if you put the ball in the air, it goes a long time up there.
It's almost 5,000 feet, I would say. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's about 4.8. But anyway, long story short, we developed the radar, and that was in the year 2000. And then 2002, we went into Singapore, Malaysia, we had FlightScope the game, and had driving range, but we were well ahead of our time, and that's how we got into the sport business. But my background was measuring projectiles fired from guns, and we had to be within 0.01% accurate. So we know about accuracy.
Exactly, people. And this is why when I realized that this man, Henri Johnson, measured bullets before he measured golf balls, that the FlightScope data is the most accurate in all of the industry. And I've tried all of the others, and I've been a believer. I mean, I was around from when FlightScope, the now X3C, was the X3, that was the kudu back in the day, this clunky, boxy sort of a thing. It's fun memories, but as I say, it's been fun to watch the progression and the growth of FlightScope. Okay, let's tell the FlightScope story a little bit in terms of the launch monitors, because there's a range of them. Because as soon as I say launch monitor to somebody, they're like, oh, it's cost prohibitive. But if someone asks me about FlightScope, apart from accuracy, I'm like, this company is ever evolving. You guys are never standing still. I mean, you hit me out of the blue with all. I turn on the website to see the new thing that's happening over here, and when I turn on, there's always something new. So what you were at the forefront of taking the launch monitor, the multi-$1,000 thing that all the PGA Tour pros are working with, and making it very accessible for any club golfer at a very cost-effective price. So share the product range for us, so people can realize there's more to it than just getting a big, expensive launch monitor, please.
Yeah, so a few years ago, we brought out, the very small one, the FlightScope Mevo. It was just very basic and could do a video clip for you, action clip with some data. That was about $500. And then we went into what we believed was the majority of the market with the Mevo Plus, like the $2,000 price range. You get a bunch of golf courses and that you can play, you can putt, chip, the whole deal. Extremely accurate. And then for those that opt in for the what's called Pro Package and Face Impact Location, that takes it to the next level. And I can safely say we have tested everything out there. We have multiple what's called vision research phantom cameras running at tens of thousands of frames per second that are synchronized fully within like 50 nanoseconds. If you know what a nanosecond is, it's pretty small. We basically then do 3D analysis and make sure that we qualify the system. So the face impact location that you even get from the Mevo Plus, I have never seen anything as accurate, not even at the most expensive price. And I don't want to talk about my competition at all, but we have tested everything out there. And with the Mevo Plus, you'll get face impact location that is so accurate, it's scary. And I want to basically stand still on that point and ask you as a teacher, what do you think? Do people really appreciate the significance of having face impact location, and what does it mean for your golf?
No, and I'm glad you would give me the microphone for a second, because I was about to pitch you with a fact. And this is how I learned this the hard way. Complete mea culpa here. God bless me, I've given thousands of lessons in my day. I wish I could have thousands of them back, knowing what I know now. Not just about ball flight dynamics and how the club performs and how the human being performs and then how the mind, all this sort of stuff. There's so much to it, as you were so astutely saying at the top of the conversation. And one of your technicians, I'll never forget, one time came and visited, and I was giving lessons and he was just watching. And then I started to get some funky numbers, or numbers I thought were funky. And I looked and I let the first one go. And then I let the second one go, because I'm not one who shows the student every data point as soon as they've hit. I'll let them at 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then I'll show them an average of what they're doing. But I began to see stuff that looked a bit wonky. And I looked over at him. I'm like, this can't be right. The ball's performing like that. And this is what I'm seeing. And he goes, Mark, that was probably a mishit. That thing was probably struck on the toe. And so the face ran open because of the collision. So you're seeing a strange club face number in relation to the path. And I was like, gosh, I had never thought about that. And that to me was liberating in a way, because now when I look at the data and I'm able to see the face impact location, I can go, okay, that ball was hit like the student or the learner wants. It's struck appropriately, and we're seeing what we want to out of the trajectory and the flight pattern. Then I'm like, okay, now we're cooking. But if you see just some shot and some number and the ball was hitting the heel or the toe, it's just not accurate. Or it's an accurate reading, but you're not getting what you want as the learner, because you're seeing some number that's basically telling you how the club performed as it was misstriking the golf ball. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely, and I think this is also a totally underestimated and not well understood fact that you just mentioned. I can give you many examples of that, and maybe I can just say the following: that the higher your swing speed, the more important it is for you to stay on the straight and narrow, meaning as close to the sweet spot as possible. And now there's another thing that I found, and I'm not sure if you found this on your journey, but I have found that there's a kind of a point of breakdown with Bath. If you go, unless you want a trick shot, but let's say when you're going for accuracy here, going to the
Yeah.
green or something, if you go outside of about, I would say, plus minus 3 degrees in your path, you become extremely sensitive to your face related or to your path. In other words, then the curvature can just become from a draw to that little snap hook that you don't want on
Yeah,
the
the
tree or
shrimp.
wherever, or the other side. So the control there that I'm looking for in my humble golf game is, I know I have to practice to be within plus minus 2.5 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
So if I want to cut, I don't want to go more, unless I want a trick shot. I want to stay within the plus minus 2.5 degrees, and then using the face to control how much I want to curve, if I can do it. But at least I have the knowledge. And I know that when I get that snap hook, I know exactly what happened. I went so much from the inside that my face to path was so much that it just took a NASCAR to the left, and it just kept on going. You can't talk to that ball. So yeah, so this is an amazing thing about where you hit it on the face, and as soon as you depart from and this is very technical, but I'm not going to say it, and you can go and think about it, and maybe you know it, but a driver, for instance, has got a very small space in which they can locate, shall we say, locate the center of mass.
Yeah.
In the design of a driver, whatever you do, you're going to have to design it mechanically that your center of mass relative to the face is going to be within a very small, shall we say, pocket almost.
Yes.
And I don't buy this whole thing about the big sweet spot.
No.
That's a dangerous statement, because as soon as you introduce a path and you strike it off the sweet spot, there's what we call a torque vector, and that's going to introduce a spin axis.
Mm-hmm.
And the faster you swing, guess what? The more severe that's going to hammer you, because that torque vector just becomes terrible. So there's as consistent as possible. As an engineer, I'm saying this not as somebody that can do it. I wish I could.
Error.
But your distribution around the sweet spot needs to be as small as possible. This is actually, it sounds so obvious. I'm sure it's not so easy to do, but that should be an objective. So if I had to give advice for anybody that's starting out as a golfer, not as a teacher, but as a scientist, I would say, like, try to find the sweet spot as often as possible, and let that be your control, and Mark can go and work on your technique and how you look, but that's what you need to find.
Well, that's kind of that is the the tightrope we walk as golfers. And when I gave a lesson yesterday to a kid who got a lesson from someone with a launch monitor, and first off, what they were doing was they weren't bearing all of the launch monitor D-plane, and this is D-plane information, folks. And on flight scopes with a certain package, you can get everything from angle of attack, spin loft, club path, face alignment. You can get vertical swing. You can get everything from the flight scope, anything you want, including face impact location, which, as you point out, is kind of where the gold lies. So people look at just one data point, and then they're like, well, the angle of attack is too steep. Then they try and shallow that off, but they don't realize that if they shallow that, then they're going to change some other number by extension. All the while, though, the athlete is trying to get the golf ball to that target that's somewhere there in the distance. And the next thing, you find some poor golfer who's completely confused because they don't really have an understanding of really what's at play here. So what your observation about just striking it solidly is the best way to go about stuff. And then once you have that down, then you can just toy a little bit with minor adjustments. And then I will say this, and I want your commentary. Again, I want these lessons back. Forgive me to people that you got this from. So I got the launch monitor and I was all proud. And I was like, I would see a swing that was like 10 inside out or outside in or whatever the case might be, right or left. I love what I love about FlightScope. It shows you an R or an L, so it's very easy to do. And I was like, well, we got to get that thing to zero. Until one day I realized, with zero being just the straight line that is the ball and target line, or where the laser of the launch monitor is shooting towards. And so I'm trying to get folks to zero. Then it occurred to me that if this person swings dead straight, or at the bottom of the arc, or whatever we're going to call it, is dead straight, then the face has to be dead square for the ball to go straight. Because if it's a couple of degrees open, the ball's off to the right, opposite to the left. Whereas to your point, if I err in a cone that's a little to the right, let's call it 1 to 4-ish, then I can make club face mistakes and still be functional. If I err a little to the left, but the club is in between that area, I can make mistakes but still be functional. So I find these people, they get the launch monitor and they see this path that's going that way. Then they're trying to go to zero as opposed to understanding, hey, let's just manage where we are there, because then the club face alignment becomes an easier job. Your commentary there.
Yeah, so I think that's a very fair point. I do think that, generally speaking, except for trick shots, in my experience from measuring thousands of people on FlightScope, I've seen with amateurs especially that, and that included myself for a long time, coming in, inside out, like a lot.
Too much. Because
and
people
that's
think
like because I lose
yeah.
my posture during the swing. You
Yeah.
can, but basically, standing up and all that kind of stuff. So, and then the club goes out there, and sometimes it just gets very bad, and it can either go solid right gone or solid left with a massive hook as well. So I would say the control, for me, in my estimation, is, I would say I would try to work, if I'm going to take it back to Trevor, your brother, when I put him on a flight scope, when we started doing the D-plane, it was at Isleworth, he won the Masters with, an angle of attack that people would, if they see that kind of angle of attack on their 7-iron, would say, no, that's wrong. He was hitting like -11 or something like that.
Yeah, that was way down.
He said to me, look, I was always trying to hit it, to de-loft that club as much as possible, because I wanted to hit it 200 yards with a 7-iron. But whatever the reasons were, he did change that. But so I want to say the following, that basically people would argue about, hey, is this angle of attack, is this the right angle of attack? Hey, it could be. It depends on the quality and the repeatability of your shot. And to your point about having a cone where you work in terms of your path and maybe in your face path, it's safer to work with a little curve either way than to try and just hit it straight. Very, very few people can hit it straight.
Call it a unicorn. The straight shot's a unicorn.
Yeah.
Yeah. That observation's so astute as well. And I just want to build on that really quickly. because people don't realize too, and this is where I had the moment of clarity, that when you really begin to understand the shape of the swing, and the FlightScope D plane gives you the I'm going to get the name wrong, but essentially the plane of the shaft as it travels in terms of angles. When you understand that on the downswing the club's traveling outward, then it turns in a corner and goes back upward and inward, it'll start to help you, because someone will say to you, well, you've got to hit more up on the ball. I can't tell you how many golfers start falling back and they're hitting upward while the club's still going outward, and they're hitting right field balls that are the worst thing in the world in an effort to launch it higher with less spin. You've heard the thing, right? But then if you begin to understand that with a slight ball position change in relative to the body, that arc's naturally going to turn upward and leftward for the right-hander, that's when you can launch those high non-spinning ones straighter down the fairway. When you really begin to understand, okay, this is how the swing works, and this is what I, to your point, need to look for when I'm using my FlightScope launch monitor behind me.
Absolutely, that's a very good point. And I want to ask you, as a
Yep.
teacher and a long-time coach, many amateurs get very confused when a teacher says or somebody says, you have to swing left.
That's ruined more car swings than car accidents. Okay. Because yes, I actually gave a lesson yesterday. This young man, powerful, had seen an instructor, naturally the inside out path, and the path was significantly right. And then you see, because folks in deep plane data, you get swing path, which FlightScope measures correctly, where other people measure right at contact. FlightScope gets it a whisker before. And then you get a number called H plane, or where the club is when it's at its lowest point in its arc. And that is the best reference for the direction of your golf swing.
Okay. Exactly.
So now remember that club's going to be turning left at some stage. So I described this to this youngster, and I'm like, listen, with you having the ball so far back in your stance, and with you sliding so hard to your lead side, that club is it's still on the downswing, it's still traveling outward. And then with you trying to heave that club back to the left-hand side with your pivot, like you and your other instructor are doing, you got more chance of seeing the Messiah descend from on high right now to help you hit this ball straight.
It's true.
And he looked at me and I'm like, listen, you need to understand that this club has to go leftward and upward at some stage. Where does your club turn the corner? It's like a NASCAR track. And if you understand where you are located in relation to the ball position, that club will be traveling left. Do you trust me? And he said, okay. And then I'm like, but you need to understand with your club face so excessively closed, you've been doing what you've been doing to get the ball somehow to the target. So we're going to neutralize your grip, square up that face, move the ball forward in your stance. Henry, he went from hitting rolling hooks to 320-yard high fades in 5 minutes.
Amazing.
Because he was located correctly so that swing could be turning, he was a lefty, could be turning rightward and upward. All of a sudden, his angle of attack numbers improved. They got way more shallow, more upward. The face alignment was way better. And of course, there wasn't the significant outward path he was seeing. But that's the thing too. And this is where you guys at FlightScope do a great job of having teaching modules for people when they buy the equipment to say, hey, okay, you're going to get all this perfect data, as accurate in the business as anything, but this is how you apply it correctly. So share some about that, please.
Yeah, so the people in my office know that I say that knowledge is really important, but what is more important is to understand what matters most.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I want to basically, just stay on that for a little while. So every player is different, and I think there's always this fear of missing out. Maybe I should use all the parameters, or maybe I should do this, or maybe I talk to my buddies or whatever. And it can be confusing if you get lost in all the data. I think what you've just explained is a perfect intervention from a coach, where you basically give guidance to an athlete that really was lost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And on a road to destruction. I mean, there's no question about it. And there are many amateurs are like that, even with the launch monitors, FlightScope, or whatever they have. And I think that I see it as follows: that yes, we provide some guidance, but our guidance is more about understanding the data and how it relates. Where the coach, like in your case, you give clarity to what you should be focusing on for you to make an improvement for most likely what's the biggest problem in your golf game right now. So that's where I think that understanding what matters most, sometimes you need guidance from a professional like yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and not your buddies telling you that your angle of attack should be such or whatever.
No kidding. I appreciate you saying that. It means a lot coming from someone I respect so greatly. So thank you. I want to get to the rangefinder, which my daughter Isabel has absconded with, just for the record. Okay.
Oh, that's fantastic.
But before, it's not fantastic at all, but thank you. Before we get there, I want to talk about Izzy, and I want to talk about how she uses the FlightScope in our garage prior to golf tournaments or high school matches that are in town. She now knows her numbers. She knows what she needs to deliver. And so part of her warm up will be to go into our garage. We've got a net over there and a mat. We project the FlightScope screen onto the white background. And she just hits balls and she makes sure about ball position, posture, alignment, and then her swing feels until she starts to see her swing path inside of her cone consistently. And then she's good to go because then she's got her feel for the day. And this was born of the fact that this child is super gifted, but she'd go out there and play like it would be, she'd be, like a superhero on certain days, and then like a bumbling idiot on others because just something was off and the practice that she was doing was not really guided by the truth. And the truth is not the ball at the target all the time. The truth is, how do you present the club to the ball in relation to the target line? And it's been a game changer to a point where I'm saying this in front of our global audience with you on the line, and I want your commentary, that I don't feel like if you really know what you're looking like and what you need to look like and what you need is numbers wise, I would not practice without a launch monitor measuring that D club data, because we can easily find a way to get balls to the target, but we could do so just cheating. And all of a sudden then, Henry, we are practicing in bad habits. And then I see countless lessons coming from people where they've gone from the frying pan into the fire just because they've been reacting to get the ball to the target. Your comment.
No, I think I would like to start almost from the end on what you just said, because that's a mouthful. I agree 100% with what you said. I do think that any athlete practicing in a certain way that might be misguided will have a very hard time to change. And even if you manage to change under pressure, bad habits seem to appear, when you don't need them.
Yeah.
And that can be as a result, and I'm not a psychologist, but that can be a result of stress and just anxiety or something on that in a competition situation. So it's much better to stay focused with correct feedback and a plan. So I like what you said about Easy. I'm really super impressed. I'm like, wow, man, that is a recipe for success. If you can have guidance like that, and that I have to stay within this cone with my path, that's a great way to start. Because now what I would do if I were her, I would absolutely monitor my distribution on my face impact location, because that is hand-eye coordination that you absolutely need to do all the time. I mean, you can be playing golf, this, you can be playing great, have a great swing, but it doesn't always translate into good scores.
Yeah. No,
and then the mind goes like, what happened now?
Yeah.
And it's like, and you doubt yourself, and doubt that's from the devil. I mean, that's really, it's just going to screw up what you try to do next. So we need faith and confidence,
Mm-hmm.
You don't need uncertainty and anxiety. You just don't need it. It's just a bad thing. So I would say, from what I listened to you, I would say to her, absolutely focus on see and be truthful to yourself. What is my distribution now, today, before I go and play on my face impact location and my cone? If you got those two down,
You're on.
you're going to have a confidence and a platform to work from.
You're preaching, Reverend Johnson. Okay. That being said, many of the features on the FlightScope things, there's the environmental optimizer, which is really cool. I feel like it's necessary in TGL so they can add some wind and stuff into the equation there for these guys who are hitting balls at a target in a perfect environment all the time. But the I4, the rangefinder, I've used Bushnell. Well, not me, other people around me. I never had a rangefinder. I still paste stuff off. I'm old school that way. But I got the I4. And I was like, are you freaking serious? This is the first thing I said to myself. And then I gave it to Isabel to check out because she was complaining about her rangefinder, the Bushnell. And so there was that. I didn't get it back. So please tell the folks about the I4. This is the latest in the FlightScope offering, which goes from the Mac Daddy of them all, the FlightScope X3, down all the way through the Mevo and to now rangefinder. So tell us the inspiration and some of its features, please.
Yeah, so I've got one right here, and I use it all the time. So, of course, it was born during what I described initially, when I was walking practice round with Bryson DeChambeau and Tiger Woods at Rivera Club, the par 3, where Bryson basically came 13 yards short with his 7-iron, his 200-yard club, and Tiger came 3 yards short, but he was on the green with his 200-yard club, which was the 6-iron. And the reason for those differences between the two, for both their 200-yard clubs, was because of how their balls reacted within the current environment, which was a little bit of sunset, temperature was down, so it dropped, and so on. So the air density basically went, much more dense at the time. So what we did was to say, okay, well, nobody's going to sit there with a computer and even with the software that I developed and calculate the stuff that like I did with, for Tim Tucker and Bryson DeChambeau here at Bay Hill. Before they played, I sat there with my Mac and I typed in all these numbers and gave him a sheet for the day.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like with his increments. So every club, he had the increments for every hour of the day.
Okay.
Because every hour of the day, the weather's changing.
Yeah. Yep.
And you can take a piece of paper along. So I was like, maybe we should think about a laser, because this will be pretty cool if we can do it. So what we have here on the i4 is all that kind of stuff and the physics you got right here, and it works with the FlightScope Golf app on your phone. So you can use it as a normal laser, that's fine. But if you connect it,
you can use it in a tournament.
yes, you can. Of course, the slope mode, if you don't connect it to your phone, slope mode is the normal, just slope mode, which is very boring. But you can't use slope modes in tournaments, of course. Now, if you connect it to the FlightScope Golf app, there's one thing you need to do. You need to tell the app who you are in terms of your club distances.
Mm-hmm.
And if you own a FlightScope or something else, you can import your data into the app for all the clubs.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you are a general amateur, you can actually use our AI. You just give like your 7-iron at your home course, and it's going to fill in the rest for you.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's the smart gapping, and it is really smart. It won't work for Bryson DeChambeau. The smart gapping doesn't work for him, because that is, now you're talking about clubs that are totally different weighted. The whole thing is different. So it's just for normal clubs. Smart gapping you can use if you're a little lazy and you just want to get going. Yeah. And it'll work for most people, even for some professional. I had Retief Goosen on that, and he was like, wow, this is amazing. Smart gapping, like that's what I do. So yeah, smart gapping is good, but if you have a launch monitor or you know your data, you can put it in.
Which essentially, for folks real fast, smart gapping is just the app, the AI telling you, hey, if you're at your 7 on 150, this is what each and every club in your bag is doing in relation to that in terms of the distance they travel.
So now when you are on the course and you basically shoot the target and say you get 160 yards, now that's your actual distance to the pin. Let's start simple. Now the laser will talk back to the app and it's going to say, hey, 160 is the distance. The app will poll the local weather station. It's going to get the air temperature, the pressure, the relative humidity, the wind speed and direction. Okay. And it's going to calculate all the things that matter, like the air density, kinematic viscosity. And it's going to say, okay, Mark, I'm going to run through all your clubs and I'm going to calculate what the increments will be now. And then it's going to say, okay, well, what you need to do, this is now maybe Denver or somewhere else where you don't play. It's going to say, well, at your home distance, at your home course, you are basically, you are playing 160. And this is 160 real, but now you're going to have to hit 176.
Because of the conditions.
Because of the conditions for you. But for another person, it might give another recommendation. So it gives you a personalized, what we call effective distance. So the effective distance is what you need to think, or you only need to think, my distance at home, 176, what do I hit? Okay, I'm going to hit that. And that's all you need to know. And you will not make a mistake. I've never been able to fold this ever on any shot. And it's going to tell you, oh, by the way, that's your 7-iron or 6-iron, whatever it is from your bag.
Yeah. No,
I've actually been at Kingswood in Durban, or no, Durban, in Knysna, in December, and I can't even remember the club pro's name there. I'm sorry, guy. But I played with him, and he's the club pro there, and he knows his distances. And it, Kingswood's up and down the hills, and it's a lot of wind, as you know.
Elevation change,
And yeah, just a lot of wind and stuff. And every time I had his numbers and I would shoot, and he said, "What does it say?" And I said, 990, and he's got a 990 in his hand because he has experience. I mean, so he was like, okay, on the back nine, this laser is going to just disappear. So yeah, it's amazing.
It is so cool, folks.
This is a golf improvement tool. So there are many nice things about it. That I think the very practical thing that will happen if you start using the i4 laser rangefinder, your golf will improve, because knowledge is power when it comes to, when you are confident about the distance that you're going to hit. When you take that club, at least you're going to do the best you can without doubting. Because as you know, doubt is not a good thing with a golf club in your hand.
Biggest swing wrecker in the world. Biggest wrecker of a swing I know.
Now, if you doubt, it's better not to swing.
Sure. No, folks, it basically is this. This is what it is. When you use this thing and you use that feature, because we use it in practice for Isabel, and then we use it just as a regular rangefinder in tournaments, or she does. And in practice, it almost starts to teach one to sense the environmental factors. Because before our conversation, my father was on the line, and he said to me, "Hey, could you imagine if you actually had this when you were playing golf back in the day?" And what it's doing, Henry, is kind of getting to a place where, that magic word experience, where a player gets out and they're like, well, he's been around the block, so he's played the course a few times, all this stuff, and you kind of get the isms to the place. You can't describe it, but on this hole, it just seems like the ball goes shorter, and on that hole, it goes a little longer. And it seems mysterious, but you just accept it after you've failed 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 times, and eventually you're like, well, I just got to go with what I feel. This is taking that out to say, here's the number, do this. And you're right, it works every single time. So it's taking the need for a lot of preparation out. And the more you use it, the more you can almost train yourself to think in that way as well. So to your point, this rangefinder is multi-purpose. It's not just a rangefinder, it's a game improvement and a game learning mechanism that anybody can use anywhere they are.
I want to actually just swing back to Genesis Invitational Par 3, 6th hole, Bryson and Tiger. If Bryson or his caddy had the i4 then, he would have hit the right club.
And then think about this too, right? Here's Tiger with all those years of experience, and he's played at Rivera countless times from when he was a kid to when he was a pro. He just knows that time of the day because the ball, let me tell you, from being at Riviera, you could set your wristwatch by like 4:30. The wind comes in off the ocean, the temperature plummets,
Exactly.
and the ball just goes nowhere. And so Tiger had been there, says like, I know through experience, the I4 has taken the need for experience away.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I spent some time with Bernard Langer, about 2 years ago, down at Boca, and we were talking about this. It was still in development, and I told him about our environmental optimizer, where you can basically plan for the day and even take the wind into account. And he was really impressed by that. But he said, I'm not going to use the wind. And I said, why? He said, well, I've been playing golf for more than 50 years. My experience, I just kind of feel and I know what to do. So his brain, tells him what to do, which is fantastic. The human brain is amazing, and he's a great guy. And yeah, human is amazing. You can learn. And this is the other thing. At some point in time, if you pay attention, you might not need the laser because you're going to know.
That's exactly the thing. I'll wrap with this, and then we can set the call to order, the action points for people. It's like aim pointing in golf, because a human being habitually under respects the influence of tilt and speed of greens. And as soon as aim point came along and made it somewhat mathematical, then people would be like, man, I would normally not aim the ball that far out over there. It's something my brother learned en route to the Masters victory in 2008. How when essentially I challenged him to take the widest line he could possibly take and still make the putt, and then just start the ball on that line and let the environmental factors take care of the rest. This is what this rangefinder kind of teaches.
Yep, it brings your brain into the equation, and you just need to pay attention, and you're gonna basically, everything's gonna improve, and you're gonna eliminate doubt, which is amazing, because confidence breeds confidence.
All right, so folks, you can get all this FlightScope stuff at flightscope.com. You can use the code on the mark for a sweet 10% discount. Henry, give us the parting shot. Leave us with something wise, please.
Well, I think I would like to say again, knowledge is great, but to understand and to appreciate what matters most is more important.
It's the truth. Thank you for your time. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate
you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, go and get some sleep. I've kept you up late. Thank you very much.
That's fine. All the best. Thank you. Bye-bye.